The capture. The crimson sun of Kepler 186 cast long shadows across the barren landscape as Sarah and her younger brother Tom trudged through the alien labor camp. Their once vibrant clothes were now tattered rags, barely clinging to their emaciated frames. Dirt and grime caked their skin, a stark reminder of the months they'd spent toiling under the harsh rule of their Zarkonian captors. Sarah, 16, glanced at her brother. At 14, Tom's boyish features had sharpened, his eyes holding a weariness no child should know. She reached out, squeezing his hand. "We'll make it through this, Tom. I promise." Tom nodded, his jaw set in determination. "I know, sis. We're Petersons. We don't give up." Their captivity had begun on a crisp autumn morning back on Earth. Sarah and Tom had been walking to school when the sky erupted in a cacophony of screeching metal and blinding light. Massive ships, beyond anything humanity had ever seen, descended upon their small town. In the chaos that followed, the siblings found themselves separated from their parents. Panic-stricken crowds fled as strange bipedal creatures with iridescent scales and multiple eyes rounded up humans like cattle. Sarah had grabbed Tom's hand, desperately trying to find a way to escape, but their efforts were futile against the advanced technology of the invaders. Now, months later, they found themselves light years from home, forced to work in a massive scrapyard on a distant alien world. The Zarkonians, a spacefaring race with an insatiable appetite for resources, had turned to enslaving lesser species to fuel their endless expansion across the galaxy. As Sarah and Tom approached the towering piles of twisted metal and discarded machinery, a harsh voice crackled over the camp's loudspeakers. "Attention, human laborers. Your daily quota has been increased by 15%. Failure to meet this new standard will result in severe consequences." Sarah felt a knot form in her stomach. They had barely been meeting the previous quota, often going to bed with empty stomachs and aching muscles. This new demand seemed impossible. "Come on," she said to Tom, forcing determination into her voice. "Let's get started." They began sifting through the mountains of scrap, searching for valuable metals and components the Zarkonians demanded. The work was grueling, the jagged edges of alien technology leaving cuts and bruises on their hands and arms. As the day wore on, Sarah's thoughts drifted to their parents. Were they still alive? Had they been taken to another labor camp? The not knowing was almost as painful as the physical toll of their captivity. "Hey, Sarah." Tom's voice broke through her reverie. "Look at this." He held up a small device, its surface covered in strange symbols. It pulsed with a faint blue light. "Be careful," Sarah warned. "Remember what happened to Malik when he activated that alien tech?" Tom nodded solemnly. They had watched in horror as their friend had been vaporized, leaving nothing but a pile of ash. The Zarkonians had merely noted the incident as acceptable loss in their logs. As they continued their work, Sarah noticed a group of guards approaching. The Zarkonians moved with an unsettling fluidity, their multiple limbs working in perfect coordination. Leading them was Overseer Vexlor, known for his particularly cruel treatment of the human captives. "You too." Vexlor's voice was a grating screech. "Your productivity has been lacking. Perhaps you need motivation." Before Sarah could react, one of the guards lifted a device. A beam of energy shot out, enveloping Tom. Her brother's scream of agony tore through the air as he collapsed to the ground, his body convulsing. "Stop!" Sarah cried out, throwing herself between Tom and the guards. "Please, we'll work harder. Just don't hurt him." Vexler's mouth parts clicked in what might have been amusement. "See that you do. The next infraction will result in more permanent consequences." As the guards moved away, Sarah knelt beside Tom, cradling his head. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Tom's eyes fluttered open, his voice weak but defiant. "It's not your fault, Sarah. We can't let them break us." As the alien sun began to set, casting an eerie purple glow across the scrapyard, Sarah helped Tom to his feet. They had failed to meet the new quota, their collection bins woefully underfilled. The siblings knew that meant another night without food, huddled together in the cramped, cold barracks that housed the human laborers. But as they made their way back, something caught Sarah's eye. Half buried beneath a pile of debris was what looked like a piece of human technology. Her heart raced as she realized it was part of a console, emblazoned with faded English letters. "Tom," she whispered, careful not to draw attention. "Look at this. It's from Earth." Her brother's eyes widened. "How did it get here?" Sarah shook her head. "I don't know. But if there's one piece, there might be more. Maybe we can find a way to contact home." For the first time in months, a spark of hope flickered in Tom's eyes. "You really think so?" Sarah squeezed his hand. "I don't know, but it's something. And right now, we need to hold on to whatever we can." As they continued toward the barracks, the siblings shared a look of renewed determination. They didn't know what the future held, but they had each other. And now, they had a glimmer of hope. In this alien world of cruelty and despair, it was enough to keep them going. The night settled over the labor camp, but in the darkness, a small flame of resistance had been ignited. Sarah and Tom Peterson, two teenagers from Earth, had taken their first step on a journey that would change not only their lives, but the fate of humanity in the stars. Discovery and hope. The alien dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of deep purple and crimson. Sarah stirred from her restless sleep, her body aching from the hard floor of the barracks. Beside her, Tom mumbled in his sleep, his face creased with worry even in slumber. "Tom," she whispered, gently shaking him awake. "It's time." Her brother's eyes fluttered open, confusion quickly replaced by grim determination as reality set in. "Right," he murmured, sitting up. Another day in paradise. As they joined the throng of human laborers shuffling towards the scrapyard, Sarah's mind raced with thoughts of the Earth technology they'd glimpsed the day before. She knew they had to be careful. Any sign of hope or rebellion was swiftly and brutally crushed by the Zarkonians. The siblings made their way to the area where they'd spotted the console, careful not to draw attention to themselves. As they began their daily task of sorting through the mountains of alien scrap, Sarah kept a watchful eye out for more human tech. Hours passed under the sweltering alien sun. Their hands were raw and bleeding from the jagged metal, but they pressed on. Just as Sarah was about to suggest they move to another area, Tom gasped. "Sarah, look!" he hissed, pointing to a partially buried object. Sarah's heart leaped as she saw what had caught Tom's attention. Protruding from beneath a pile of twisted alien alloys was what appeared to be the barrel of an enormous gun, unmistakably of human design. "It can't be," Sarah breathed, her mind racing. "How did this get here?" Tom's eyes were wide with excitement. "Remember those old war movies Dad used to watch? About the Titan program?" Sarah nodded slowly, realization dawning. The Titan program had been Earth's most ambitious military project. Massive, humanoid war machines designed to be piloted by a single person. They had been mothballed decades ago, deemed too expensive and impractical for modern warfare. But if one was here, "We need to uncover it," Sarah said, her voice low and urgent. "But we have to be smart about this, if the Zarkonians realize what we found." Tom nodded grimly. "They'd kill us all." Over the next few days, the siblings worked tirelessly to uncover more of the Titan without arousing suspicion. They carefully shifted debris, making it look like they were simply sorting through the scrap as usual. Bit by bit, more of the colossal war machine was revealed. It was on the 5th day of their secret excavation that they made a breakthrough. As they cleared away a large piece of alien hull plating, they uncovered the Titan's cockpit. The reinforced glass of the viewport was miraculously intact, and through it, they could see the pilot's seat and control panels. "We need to get inside," Tom said, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and excitement. Sarah nodded, her mind already working on a plan. "Tonight," she whispered, "after lights out, we'll sneak back here." The rest of the day passed in a blur of anticipation and anxiety. As they worked, Sarah and Tom discussed their plan in hushed tones, always wary of the watchful eyes and ears of the Zarkonian guards. When night finally fell and the camp grew quiet, the siblings slipped out of the barracks. Their hearts pounded as they crept through the shadows, every sound making them freeze in fear of discovery. At last, they reached the partially uncovered Titan. In the pale light of Kepler 186f's 3 moons, the war machine looked like a sleeping giant, waiting to be awakened. "Here," Sarah said, pointing to a manual release lever on the side of the cockpit. "Help me with this." Together, they strained against the lever. For a moment, nothing happened, and Sarah felt a wave of despair wash over her. But then, with a groan of protesting metal, the cockpit hatch began to open. Stale air rushed out as the seal broke, carrying with it the faint scent of earth, of home. Sarah and Tom exchanged a look of wonder before carefully climbing inside. The cockpit was cramped, designed for a single pilot, but the siblings managed to squeeze in together. Sarah settled into the pilot's seat, running her hands over the controls. "Okay," she murmured, more to herself than to Tom. "Let's see what we're dealing with." She began flipping switches and pressing buttons, praying that some system would respond. For long moments, nothing happened. Then, with a low hum, the control panel flickered to life. Tom let out a soft whoop of joy, quickly stifling it for fear of being overheard. Sarah felt tears pricking at her eyes as she stared at the glowing displays, filled with familiar English text. A mechanical voice, tinny and distorted from years of disuse, emanated from the speakers. "Titan Unit 117 online. Running Systems Diagnostic." Sarah and Tom watched in awe as a list of the Titan's systems scrolled across the main screen. Many were marked in red, indicating damage or failure, but others glowed a reassuring green. "What do we do now?" Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself. "We learn. We repair. And then, we fight back." Over the next few weeks, the siblings fell into a new routine. By day, they continued their labor in the scrapyard, careful to meet their quotas to avoid suspicion. But each night, they would sneak out to the Titan, slowly learning its systems and making what repairs they could with the limited tools and materials at their disposal. It was grueling work, leaving them exhausted and constantly on edge. But for the first time since their capture, they had purpose and hope. As they worked, Sarah and Tom began to piece together how the Titan had ended up on this alien world. According to the machine's logs, it had been part of a secret mission to establish a human presence beyond the solar system. Something had gone wrong during the journey, forcing an emergency landing on Kepler 186f. The pilot's fate remained a mystery, but the siblings chose to believe they had somehow escaped, rather than face the alternative. One night, as they were elbow-deep in the Titan circuitry, Tom voiced the fear that had been gnawing at both of them. "Sarah, what if we can't do this? What if we're caught?" Sarah paused in her work, turning to face her brother. In the dim light of the cockpit, she could see the worry etched on his face, making him look far older than his 14 years. "Then we'll have tried," she said firmly. "We can't just accept this life, Tom. Mom and Dad raised us to stand up for ourselves, to fight for what's right. This is our chance to do that, not just for us, but for everyone here." Tom nodded, a small smile breaking through his concern. "You're right. We're Petersons. We don't give up." As the days turned to weeks, and weeks to months, the siblings made slow but steady progress on repairing the Titan. They scavenged parts from the scrapyard, careful to take only what wouldn't be missed. They studied the machine's manual, learning its intricacies and marveling at the ingenuity of its human designers. But their secret work didn't go entirely unnoticed. Other human laborers began to whisper about the Peterson siblings, wondering at their newfound energy and the hope that seemed to radiate from them despite their circumstances. One day, as Sarah was carrying a load of scrap to the sorting area, she was approached by an older woman named Maria. The woman's eyes darted nervously to the nearby guards before she leaned in close. "You found something, haven't you?" Maria whispered. "Something that could help us." Sarah hesitated, her heart racing. Could they trust anyone else with their secret? But as she looked into Maria's eyes, she saw the same desperation and hope that she and Tom had been clinging to. "Meet us behind the eastern barracks tonight," Sarah murmured. "Bring anyone you trust completely. But be careful if the Zarkonians suspect anything." Maria nodded, understanding the unspoken warning. "We'll be there," she promised before hurrying away. That night, Sarah and Tom found themselves facing a small group of fellow captives. In hushed tones, they explained what they had discovered and their plans to use the Titan to fight back against their oppressors. "It's a suicide mission," one man growled, though there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Maybe," Sarah admitted, "but isn't it better than living like this? Than dying slowly in this camp?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. One by one, they pledged their support, offering to help however they could. With more hands to help and more eyes to keep watch, work on the Titan progressed more quickly. The human captives organized themselves into shifts, always ensuring that someone was keeping up appearances in the camp, while others worked on the war machine. But as their numbers grew, so did the risk of discovery. The Zarkonians seemed to sense that something was amiss, increasing their patrols and scrutinizing the humans more closely. The breaking point came on a day like any other. Sarah and Tom were at their usual posts in the scriptyard when they heard a commotion from the direction of the Titan's hiding place. Their blood ran cold as they saw a group of guards dragging Maria towards the overseer's quarters. "They know," Tom whispered, his face pale with fear. Sarah's mind raced. They weren't ready. The Titan was operational, but barely. Many of its weapon systems were still offline, and they hadn't had time to test its mobility fully. But they were out of time. "Get everyone to the Titan," Sarah ordered, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her gut. "It's now or never." As alarms began to blare across the camp, the human captives sprang into action. Those nearest to the Titan rushed to it, while others created diversions to draw the guards away. Sarah and Tom sprinted through the chaos, dodging energy blasts and leaping over debris. They could hear the shouts of the Zarkonians behind them, growing closer with each passing second. Finally, they'd reached the Titan. Their fellow captives had already begun the power-up sequence, the war machine humming to life. "Everyone inside," Sarah shouted, helping people climb into the Titan's body. It wasn't designed to hold so many, but they would make it work. They had to. As the last of the humans clambered aboard, Sarah took her place in the pilot's seat. Tom stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "Ready?" she asked, her finger hovering over the main ignition switch. Tom nodded, his jaw set in determination. "Let's show these aliens what humans are made of." With a deep breath, Sarah flipped the switch. The Titan roared to life, servos whining and metal groaning as it rose to its full height for the first time in years. Through the viewport, they could see the Zarkonians approaching, their weapons trained on the massive war machine. But there was fear in their alien eyes now, fear of the unknown, of the human spirit they had so gravely underestimated. Sarah gripped the controls, a fierce grin spreading across her face. "All right," she said, her voice ringing with determination. "Let's take back our freedom." With that, the Titan took its first thunderous step, marking the beginning of a battle that would change the fate of humanity in the stars. Preparation and setbacks. The ground shook as the Titan took its first lumbering step. Inside the cramped cockpit, Sarah gritted her teeth, struggling to maintain control of the massive war machine. Beside her, Tom frantically worked the auxiliary systems, trying to bring weapons online. "How are we doing?" Sarah asked, her eyes fixed on the vidscreens showing the panicked Zarkonians scattering before them. Tom shook his head, frustration evident in his voice. "Main cannons still offline. We got limited mobility in the left arm, and the targeting systems glitchy at best. Sarah nodded grimly. They'd known the Titan wasn't fully repaired, but the sudden need to act had forced their hand. Now they'd have to make do with what they had. A crackling voice came over the internal comm system. Maria, speaking from the makeshift passenger area they'd rigged in the Titan's torso. "We've got wounded down here." The last group took fire getting in. "Understood," Sarah replied. "We'll get them to safety as soon as we can. For now, everyone hold on. This might get rough." As if in response to her words, a barrage of energy bolts struck the Titan's armor. Alarms blared as damage reports scrolled across the screens. "They're bringing out the heavy weapons," Tom mourned, his fingers flying over the controls. "Shields are holding for now, but I don't know for how long." Sarah nodded, a plan forming in her mind. "We need to get out of this camp. Once we're in open terrain, we'll have more options." She turned to her brother. "Can you get me a map of the area?" Tom tapped a few commands, and a holographic display flickered to life between them. It showed the layout of the labor camp and the surrounding landscape, mostly barren plains with scattered rock formations. "There," Sarah said, pointing to a cluster of canyons to the east. "If we can make it there, we might be able to lose them and buy some time for repairs." With a goal in mind, Sarah steered the Titan towards the camp's perimeter fence. The massive machine's feet crushed equipment and buildings alike, the screams of fleeing Zarkonians barely audible over the groan of stressed metal. As they approached the fence, a new alarm sounded. Energy buildup detected. The Titan's AI announced, "Unknown weapon charging." Before Sarah could react, a blinding beam of light lanced out from a hidden installation near the camp's center. It struck the Titan squarely in the chest, sending cascades of sparks through the cockpit. "Status report," Sarah shouted, fighting to keep the Titan upright. Tom coughed, waving away acrid smoke. "That took out our main power relay. We're on auxiliary systems now." "Sarah, we can't take another hit like that." Sarah's mind raced. They were so close to freedom, but one more blast from that weapon would end their escape before it truly began. They needed a plan, and fast. "Tom," she said, an idea forming. "The arm. You said we have limited mobility." Her brother nodded. "Yeah, basic motor functions." "Why?" A grim smile spread across Sarah's face. "Because we're about to play the world's biggest game of fetch." Understanding dawned in Tom's eyes. He quickly began inputting commands, routing what power they had left to the Titan's left arm. Outside, the Zarkonian weapon was charging for another shot. Sarah could see the energy building, the air itself seeming to warp around the barrel. "Now," she shouted. With a groan of protesting metal, the Titan's arm swung upward. Its massive hand closed around a nearby guard tower, ripping it from its foundations. With a mighty heave, Sarah sent the improvised projectile hurtling towards the Zarkonian weapon. The tower struck just as the weapon fired. The resulting explosion lit up the night sky, the shockwave buffeting the Titan and sending Zarkonians flying. "That's our cue," Sarah said, pushing the Titan's legs to their limit. They crashed through the perimeter fence, alarms blaring as the stressed systems threatened to give out at any moment. But they were out. For the first time in months, Sarah, Tom, and their fellow captives were beyond the confines of the labor camp. There was no time to celebrate, though. Behind them, they could hear the whine of Zarkonian pursuit craft powering up. "How long to reach the canyons?" Sarah asked, pushing the Titan as fast as its damaged systems would allow. Tom consulted the map. "At our current speed, maybe 20 minutes, but Sarah..." He hesitated, his face grim. "I don't think we have 20 minutes." As if to emphasize his point, energy bolts from the pursuing craft began to rain down around them. Most missed, kicking up plumes of dust and rock, but a few found their mark. Each hit sent shudders through the Titan's frame. "We need a diversion," Sarah muttered, her mind racing. Then an idea struck. "Tom, can you get me comms with the passenger area?" Her brother nodded, patching her through. "Go ahead." "Listen up, everyone," Sarah said, her voice echoing through the Titan's interior. "We need to lighten our load and slow down our pursuers. I need volunteers to use the emergency pods. Your job will be to draw off as many of the Zarkonians as you can." There was a moment of silence. Then Maria's voice came through. "We're ready. Just tell us what to do." Sarah quickly outlined her plan. The Titan was equipped with small one-person escape pods, a failsafe in case the main pilot needed to abandon the machine. They'd use these to deploy volunteers, each pod programmed with a different trajectory to confuse the Zarkonians. "It's dangerous," Sarah warned. "But if we don't do this, none of us will make it." To her relief and admiration, there was no shortage of volunteers. One by one, escape pods were launched, streaking off in different directions. The plan worked. Many of the pursuit craft broke off, chasing what they thought might be the Titan's pilot trying to escape. With the reduced weight and fewer pursuers, the Titan's progress towards the canyons quickened. But they weren't in the clear yet. "Sarah," Tom's voice was tight with worry. "We've got a problem. That last barrage took out one of our leg actuators. We're losing mobility fast." Sarah felt a knot form in her stomach. They were so close to the canyons, she could see the towering rock formations looming ahead. But with a damaged leg, their speed was dropping rapidly. "Options?" she asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be good. Tom shook his head. "At this rate, we'll never make it before they catch up. Unless..." "Unless what?" Sarah prompted when he trailed off. "Unless we divert all remaining power to the legs. It might get us there, but we'd be defenseless," Sarah finished. It was a huge risk. Without power to their weapons or shields, even a glancing hit could be devastating. For a moment, Sarah froze. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her. This wasn't just her life she was gambling with. It was Tom's and all the other captives who had put their faith in them. Then, she remembered her father's words from what felt like a lifetime ago. "Sometimes, Sarah, you have to take a leap of faith. Trust in yourself and in those around you." "Do it," she said, her voice steady. Tom nodded, his fingers flying over the controls. The Titan shuddered as power was rerouted, auxiliary systems shutting down one by one. "Here goes nothing," Sarah muttered, pushing the Titan to its limit. The war machine surged forward, eating up the distance to the canyons. Behind them, the remaining Zarkonian craft closed in, their weapons charging. "Come on," Sarah urged, watching the canyon entrance grow larger in her view screen. Just a little further. Energy bolts lanced past them, close enough that Sarah could feel the heat through the Titan's armor. Warnings flashed across her screens. Critical systems failing, power reserves depleting rapidly. With a final, mighty stride, the Titan crossed the threshold into the canyon. Sarah immediately steered them behind a massive boulder, using the natural cover to shield them from the Zarkonians' fire. "We made it," Tom breathed, disbelief and joy mingling in his voice. Sarah allowed herself a small smile, but she knew they weren't out of danger yet. "All right, let's see what we're working with." Full damage report. As Tom began assessing their situation, Sarah opened a channel to the passenger compartment. "Status update. Is everyone okay back there?" Maria's voice came through, shaky but determined. "We're alive. A few injuries from the rough ride, but nothing critical. Sarah, what you and Tom did, thank you." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. "We're not done yet, but we've bought ourselves some time. Now we need to make the most of it." Over the next few hours, the humans worked tirelessly to repair what they could of the Titan. Those with engineering experience helped Tom diagnose and fix the most critical systems, while others stood watch, alert for any sign of Zarkonian patrols. As the alien sun began to set, casting long shadows through the canyon, Sarah called a meeting. The Titan's cockpit was crowded as key members of their group squeezed in to discuss their next move. "Here's where we stand," Sarah began, her voice tired but determined. "We've managed to get basic mobility back, and our energy reserves are slowly recharging. But we're still in no shape for a prolonged fight." "So what's the plan?" asked Raj, a former mechanic who had proven invaluable in their repair efforts. Sarah pulled up the holographic map. "There's an old mining outpost about 50 kilometers from here. It's been abandoned for years, but the Zarkonians used to use it as a supply depot. If we're lucky, we might find what we need to get the Titan fully operational." "And if we're not lucky?" Maria asked, voicing the concern on everyone's mind. Sarah met her gaze steadily. "Then we do what we've always done. We adapt, we survive, and we keep fighting." A murmur of agreement ran through the group. Despite the odds stacked against them, there was a palpable sense of hope, something many of them hadn't felt since their capture. As the others filed out to prepare for their next move, Tom lingered behind. "Sarah," he said softly, "are you okay?" Sarah turned to her brother, seeing the concern in his eyes. For a moment, she considered putting on a brave face, being the strong leader everyone expected. But this was Tom, the one person she didn't have to pretend with. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've come so far, but there's still so much that could go wrong. All these people are counting on us, and I don't know if I'm cut out for this." Tom stepped forward, enveloping his sister in a tight hug. "You're not alone in this," he said fiercely. "We're in it together, remember? And for what it's worth, I can't think of anyone I'd rather have leading us." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes as she returned the hug. "Thanks, little brother," she murmured. As they broke apart, a new determination filled Sarah. Yes, the road ahead was uncertain and fraught with danger, but they had already achieved the impossible. They had hope, they had each other, and they had the indomitable human spirit that had carried their species to the stars. "All right," Sarah said, squaring her shoulders. "Let's get to work. We've got a long night ahead of us, and an even longer day tomorrow." As she and Tom began preparing the Titan for their next journey, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain. The Zarkonians had no idea what they'd unleashed when they decided to enslave humanity, and soon, very soon, they would learn to regret it. Awakening the Titan. The alien sun had barely crested the horizon when Sarah powered up the Titan systems. The war machine hummed to life, displays flickering on throughout the cockpit. Tom, bleary-eyed from a night of repairs, took his place at the auxiliary control panel. "How are we looking?" Sarah asked, running through the pre-movement checklist. Tom stifled a yawn as he responded. "Better than yesterday, but that's not saying much. We've got about 60% mobility, minimal weapon systems online, and shields are touch and go. It'll have to do." Sarah nodded grimly. "All right, everyone. Strap in. We're moving out." The Titan's first steps were tentative, its damaged leg servos groaning under the strain. Sarah gritted her teeth, feeling every shudder and tremor through the control yoke. As they emerged from the shelter of the canyon, the vast alien landscape stretched before them, a sea of rusty red rock under a pale lavender sky. "Any sign of pursuit?" Sarah asked, her eyes scanning the horizon. Tom shook his head. "Nothing on sensors yet, but wait." He leaned closer to his display, brow furrowed. "I'm picking up some kind of transmission. It's faint, but..." Suddenly, the Titan's speakers crackled to life, filling the cockpit with a burst of static followed by a voice, unmistakably human. "Anyone out there? This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Earth ship Horizon. We've crash-landed on this godforsaken rock and are under attack by hostile aliens. If anyone can hear this, we need immediate assistance. Our coordinates are..." The message cut off abruptly, dissolving back into static. Sarah and Tom exchanged a look of shock and hope. "Can you trace it?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. Tom's fingers flew over the controls. "Got it. It's coming from... hell, It's coming from that mining outpost we were heading for. Sarah's mind raced. This changed everything. Not only was there a possibility of finding supplies to repair the Titan, but now there were other humans to rescue, possibly even a way off this planet. "All right," she said, her voice steady with renewed determination. "New plan. We make for that outpost as fast as this big guy can move. Tom, get on the comms. Let everyone know what's happening and tell them to be ready for anything." As Tom relayed the information to the rest of their group, Sarah pushed the Titan to its limits. The damaged leg made their gait uneven, each step a struggle against the machine's own weight, but Sarah refused to slow down. Every moment counted now. They had covered perhaps half the distance to the mining outpost when Tom's alarmed voice cut through the cockpit. "Incoming. Multiple bogies, fast approach from the southeast." Sarah's hands tightened on the controls. "Zarkonian fighters." "Affirmative," Tom confirmed, his voice grim. "Looks like they've figured out where we're headed." No sooner had the words left his mouth than the first volley of energy blasts struck the Titan. The war machine shuddered under the impact, alarms blaring throughout the cockpit. "Shields are failing." Tom shouted over the din. "We can't take much more of this." Sarah's mind raced. They were still too far from the outpost to make a run for it, and in their current state, they couldn't hope to outfight the Zarkonian ships. They needed a plan, and fast. "The terrain," Sarah muttered, an idea forming. "Tom, what's our exact position?" Her brother quickly pulled up a topographical map. "We're approaching a series of ridges and ravines." "Why?" A grim smile spread across Sarah's face. "Because we're about to play a little game of hide and seek." With that, she veered the Titan sharply to the right, heading straight for the nearest ravine. The sudden movement threw off the Zarkonian fighters' aim, their energy blasts scorching the ground where the Titan had been moments before. "Everyone hold on," Sarah called over the internal comms. "This is going to get bumpy." The Titan half ran, half slid down the slope of the ravine, loose rocks and debris cascading around it. Sarah fought with the controls, struggling to keep the massive war machine upright as they descended into the shadows of the gorge. "They're still on us," Tom reported, his eyes glued to the sensor readouts. "But they're having trouble tracking us in these canyons." Sarah nodded, her focus intense as she guided the Titan through the twisting passages. "Good. Let's see if we can lose them for good." For the next heart-pounding minutes, Sarah piloted the Titan through a maze of narrow canyons and towering rock formations. The Zarkonian ships darted overhead, their energy weapons lighting up the shadows as they searched for their prey. Finally, as they rounded a bend in a particularly narrow passage, Sarah spotted what she'd been hoping for, a cave opening, just large enough for the Titan to squeeze through. "There," she said, pointing it out to Tom. "That's our ticket out of this mess." Tom's eyes widened as he realized her plan. "Sarah, we don't know how deep that cave goes. If it's a dead end, then we're no worse off than we are now," Sarah finished. "Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith, remember." With that, she steered the Titan towards the cave entrance. The war machine's shoulders scraped against the rock as they entered, showering sparks and leaving deep gouges in the stone. For a terrifying moment, Sarah thought they might get stuck, but then they were through, plunging into the darkness of the cave system. "Kill all external lights," Sarah ordered as soon as they were clear of the entrance. "Passive sensors only. Let's see if we can't give our friends out there the slip." In the eerie green glow of the night vision displays, Sarah carefully maneuvered the Titan deeper into the cave. The sounds of the Zarkonian fighters grew fainter, eventually fading away entirely. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Sarah finally allowed herself to relax slightly. "I think we lost them," she said, her voice heavy with relief. Tom nodded, slumping back in his seat. "Yeah, but now we're lost too. How are we going to find our way out of here, let alone get to that outpost?" Before Sarah could respond, a new alarm sounded, softer than the battle klaxons, but no less urgent. "What now?" Sarah groaned, scanning the displays for the source of the problem. Tom's face paled as he read the diagnostic readout. "Sarah, we're losing power. Fast. Whatever that last hit did, it damaged our main reactor. We've got maybe an hour of juice left, tops." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Without power, they'd be trapped in this cave system. Tons of dead metal entombing them, and all the other humans who had placed their trust in her. For a moment, despair threatened to overwhelm her. But then, unbidden, a memory surfaced. Her father's voice, strong and sure. "A Peterson never gives up, Sarah. When things look darkest, that's when you dig deep and find that spark of hope." Sarah took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Okay," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Okay, we're not done yet." Tom reroute all non-essential power to life support and minimal mobility. "I'm going to try something." As Tom complied, Sarah closed her eyes, trying to remember everything she'd learned about the Titan's systems during their frantic repair sessions. There was something, a failsafe, a last resort option. Her eyes snapped open. "The neural link," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom looked at her, confusion evident on his face. "What?" "The neural link," Sarah repeated, more confidently now. "It was in the manual, remember? A direct interface between the pilot's brain and the Titan systems. It was deemed too dangerous for regular use, but in emergencies." Understanding dawned in Tom's eyes, quickly followed by concern. "Sarah, no. We don't know what that could do to you. It's too risky." Sarah met her brother's gaze, her determination clear. "We're out of options, Tom. This is our only shot." Before Tom could protest further, Sarah began the activation sequence for the neural link. A helmet-like apparatus descended from the ceiling of the cockpit, settling over her head. "If this works," Sarah said, her finger hovering over the final activation switch, "I should be able to control the Titan more efficiently, maybe even access systems we couldn't repair conventionally. If it doesn't..." She trailed off, leaving the grim possibilities unspoken. Tom reached out, gripping her free hand tightly. "Together," he said simply. Sarah nodded, squeezing his hand in return. "Together," she agreed. Then, taking a deep breath, she flipped the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, Sarah's world exploded into light and sensation. It was as if her consciousness had expanded, filling every circuit and servo of the massive war machine. She could feel the cool metal of its armor, the pulsing energy of its reactor, the myriad systems that made up its artificial nervous system. "Sarah?" Tom's voice sounded distant, as if coming from underwater. "Sarah, can you hear me?" With an effort, Sarah forced her awareness back to the cockpit. "I'm here," she said, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. "It's incredible, Tom. I can feel everything." As she spoke, displays throughout the cockpit flickered to life, systems coming online that had been dark since they'd found the Titan. The reactor's power level stabilized, then began to climb. "How?" Tom began, staring at the readouts in disbelief. "The Titan," Sarah explained, her voice filled with wonder. "It's not just a machine, Tom. It's alive, in its own way. And it remembers. It remembers Earth and its mission. And," her eyes widened, "and it knows where we are. It can guide us out." True to her words, a holographic map materialized between them, showing their position in the cave system and the quickest route to the surface, a route that would put them within striking distance of the mining outpost. "All right," Sarah said, a new confidence in her voice. "Let's go save some humans and show these aliens what we're really capable of." With that, the Titan surged forward, moving with a grace and power it hadn't possessed even before its long dormancy. As they emerged from the cave system into the alien sunlight, Sarah felt a surge of hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, human and machine, united in purpose. The Zarkonians had awakened a sleeping giant, and now they would face the consequences of their actions. As the mining outpost came into view on the horizon, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The real battle was just beginning, but for the first time since their capture, she truly believed they had a chance to win. Triumph and liberation. The mining outpost loomed before them, a sprawling complex of weathered metal structures and towering extraction equipment. As the Titan approached, Sarah could see signs of recent conflict, scorch marks on buildings, debris scattered across the grounds, and the unmistakable flashes of weapons fire. "Tom," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her, "scan for human life signs." Her brother's fingers flew over the controls, his face illuminated by the glow of the display. "Got them. I'm picking up a cluster of human biosignatures in the central building. They're surrounded by a lot of hostiles." Sarah nodded grimly. Through her neural link with the Titan, she could feel the war machine's systems humming with renewed energy. "All right, let's introduce ourselves." With a thought, Sarah activated the Titan's external speakers. Her voice boomed across the battlefield, amplify 100-fold. "Attention Zarkonian forces, this is your one and only warning. Release your human captives immediately, or face the consequences." For a moment, there was silence. Then, the air erupted with energy blasts as the Zarkonians responded to this new threat. "I guess that's a no," Tom muttered. Sarah allowed herself a small, fierce smile. Their mistake. With fluid grace that belied its massive size, the Titan strode into the fray. Energy bolts splashed harmlessly against its rejuvenated shields as Sarah targeted the nearest Zarkonian emplacements. "Weapons free," she announced, more for Tom's benefit than any real need. Through the neural link, Sarah could control the Titan's armaments with mere thoughts. The Titan's arm cannons roared to life, sending precisely targeted blasts that reduced Zarkonian gun nests to smoldering craters. With its other arm, the war machine swatted alien fighters from the sky, as if they were annoying insects. Inside the cockpit, Tom whooped with excitement. "That's it, Sarah. Show them what happens when they mess with humanity." But Sarah remained focused, her mind interfaced with the Titan's targeting systems. She was careful to avoid any shots that might endanger the human captives, instead concentrating on disabling the Zarkonians' defensive capabilities. As they fought their way towards the central building, Sarah became aware of a new presence through the neural link. The Titan's AI, dormant for so long, was awakening fully. It communicated not in words, but in impressions and data streams, augmenting Sarah's own abilities. "Tom," Sarah said, her voice tight with concentration, "I need you to coordinate with the humans inside. Tell them to be ready to move as soon as we create an opening." As Tom established communication with the captives, Sarah pressed the attack. The Titan's every movement was a symphony of destructive power, each step crushing Zarkonian vehicles, each swing of its arms scattering enemy troops. Finally, they reached the central building. The Titan's sensors pierced the structure's walls, revealing the huddle of human captives within, and the Zarkonian troops closing in on them. "No time for subtlety," Sarah muttered. With a thought, she activated the Titan's shoulder-mounted missile launchers. A barrage of precision strikes blew open the side of the building, creating an escape route for the captives. "Now," Sarah shouted over the comms, "everyone out. We'll cover you." Through the Titan's external cameras, Sarah watched as a stream of ragged, wide-eyed humans emerged from the smoking building. Among them, she spotted a woman in the tattered remains of what might once have been a captain's uniform. Elena Rodriguez, she presumed. As the freed captives ran towards the Titan's protective shadow, the Zarkonians mounted a desperate counterattack. Waves of troops and vehicles converged on their position, energy weapons lighting up the sky. "Sarah," Tom's voice was urgent. "There's too many of them. We can't hold this position and protect the civilians." Sarah's mind raced, processing tactical data faster than she ever could have without the neural link. The Titan's AI offered suggestions, outlining possible strategies. In a flash of inspiration, Sarah saw their path to victory. "The reactor," she said, her voice filled with grim determination. "This outpost must have a central power core. If we can overload it." Tom's eyes widened as he realized her plan. It would take out the whole complex, and a good chunk of the Zarkonian forces with it. Sarah nodded. "Exactly. But first, we need to get these people to safety." She opened a channel to the freed captives. "Captain Rodriguez, do you copy?" A tired but strong voice responded. "I copy. Who am I speaking to?" "Sarah Peterson. My brother and I are piloting this Titan. We're here to get you all out, but we need your help. Are there any operational ships at this outpost?" There was a pause before Rodriguez replied. "There's a Zarkonian transport on the far side of the complex. We were planning to try for it before you arrived." "Good," Sarah said. "Get your people there. We'll clear a path and cover your escape." She switched back to internal comms. "Tom, I need you to go with them. Help Rodriguez get that ship in the air." Tom's head snapped up, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What? No, I'm not leaving you." "This isn't a debate," Sarah said, her voice brooking no argument. "They'll need every skilled hand that can get to pilot that ship. And," she paused, her expression softening, "I need to know you're safe, little brother." For a moment, Tom looked like he might argue further. Then, with visible effort, he nodded. "Okay, but you better be right behind us, you hear me?" Sarah managed a small smile. "I promise. Now go." As Tom climbed out of the cockpit to join the escaping humans, Sarah turned her full attention back to the battle. The Titan moved with renewed purpose, carving a path through the Zarkonian forces towards the far side of the complex. Energy blasts and explosions rocked the war machine, but Sarah barely felt them. She was one with the Titan now. Its strength her strength, its purpose her purpose. They would see this through, together. Finally, Sarah spotted the Zarkonian transport, a sleek alien craft easily large enough to hold all the freed captives. She watched through the Titan's cameras as Tom and Rodriguez led the group aboard, her brother pausing at the entrance to look back at her. "That's it, Sarah." Tom's voice crackled over the comms. "We're all aboard. Get out of there." But Sarah knew she couldn't leave. Not yet. The Zarkonians were regrouping, bringing in reinforcements. If she didn't finish this now, the humans would never make it off the planet. "Get that ship in the air," Sarah ordered, her voice steady despite the emotions roiling within her. "I'll draw their fire and take care of the reactor." "Sarah, no." Tom's anguished cry tore at her heart. "We can find another way." "There is no other way," Sarah said softly. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith, remember? I love you, Tom. Now go." With that, Sarah severed the communication link. Through tear-blurred eyes, she watched as the transport lifted off, quickly ascending into the alien sky. "All right," she muttered, turning the Titan to face the heart of the Zarkonian complex. "Let's finish this." The Titan charged forward, weathering a storm of enemy fire. Sarah pushed it to its limits, overtaxing systems and burning through power reserves. None of that mattered now. All that mattered was completing the mission. They reached the central reactor building, a massive structure thrumming with barely contained energy. Sarah raised the Titan's arms, unleashing every weapon in its considerable arsenal. The building's reinforced walls crumbled under the onslaught, exposing the pulsing core within. Warning klaxons blared throughout the cockpit as the Titan's sensors detected the imminent overload. Sarah knew she had only moments left. In that final instant, as the world around her began to dissolve in blinding light, Sarah felt a sense of peace wash over her. They had done it. The captives were free. Tom was safe. Humanity would live to fight another day. The reactor detonated, a miniature sun blossoming in the heart of the alien complex. The shockwave rolled outward, vaporizing everything in its path. Aboard the escaping transport, Tom watched in horror as the outpost disappeared in a ball of fire. "Sarah," he screamed, pounding his fists against the viewport. Captain Rodriguez placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Your sister saved us all," she said softly. "She's a hero." Tom nodded numbly, tears streaming down his face. As the transport broke atmosphere, leaving the alien world behind, he made a silent vow. He would carry on Sarah's fight. He would see humanity free, no matter the cost. And someday, somehow, he would find a way back to this planet, to find his sister or to avenge her. The Zarkonian ship, now under human control, accelerated into the depths of space. Aboard, the freed captives began to plan their next move. They were battered, traumatized, and far from home. But they were alive, and they were free. As stars streaked past the viewports, Tom Peterson stood at the ship's controls, his jaw set with determination. Sarah's sacrifice would not be in vain. Humanity had taken its first step towards reclaiming its destiny among the stars. And somewhere, in the twisted wreckage of an alien mining outpost, beneath tons of scorched metal and rock, a faint energy signature pulsed. Deep within the armored shell of a Titan, systems slowly, impossibly, began to reboot. Sarah Peterson opened her eyes to darkness, the neural link humming with residual energy. The Titan's AI, now irrevocably intertwined with her own consciousness, conveyed a simple message: survive, rebuild, return. A smile curved Sarah's lips as the Titan's repair protocols engaged. This wasn't the end of her story. It was only the beginning.